So now, welcome. I'm back with another introduction on concepts under exponents and inequality. So I will start with inequality. Solving for x is somewhat important in inequality. If you know how to solve for x, you won't struggle with inequality. There's going to be a slight difference. So now I'm going to give you a hint on how do you deal with inequality. So now the first point that I will give you is yes, solve for x. And then the second point that I will give you is name your x values CV, not curriculum vitae, the critical values, the critical values. So now, same as solve for x. What we normally do with solve for x, we solve and then we are done. But with inequality, we solve, we name our x values, the critical values. You can just write CV, and then you place your x values on number line. And you place them accordingly. And then the fourth point, after placing your x values and after placing your x values on the number line, what you will do is you will put intervals. I will show you how to put intervals. I will show you how to put your intervals. And then you go to your original equation. To make judgment. I'm sure I'm speaking Hindi in some people, or according to some people I'm speaking Hindi, but I'm going to show you how to follow this guideline or in order for you to be able to solve the inequality. You solve for x, you know your x values, which will be your critical values. You place your x values on the number line accordingly. You put intervals. You go to your original equations to make judgment. But let me add something here. Okay, let me put it here. It's not a problem. You go to your original equation to make judgment, and then you substitute any value lying or any value that lie within the interval. So these are your points for your escape plan in solving the inequality. You solve for x, and don't forget those cases, type 1, type 2, and type 3. They are very, very important in inequality. You solve for x, you name your x values, place all these points. So now let's take an example and I will show you how to apply these steps or these points. Let me remove them. I want to fold them so that I will explain each and every step. So now, suppose we are solving the following inequality. let's say solve for x. Okay, let's say we have x squared minus 5x is greater than or equal x. Oh, sorry, not x, 6. So now, what is this thing all about? The first question said, the first point said solve for x. So we're going to solve for x, but when we solve for x, we are not going to include, we're just going to solve for x like, we treat this thing as if it was equal sign. So now let's go ahead and do that. So now remember I said you need to remember your types. So you see we need 0 on that side. So we take 6 to the other side. So we have x squared minus 5x. It's positive. If it go to that side, it will be negative. We still have our sign there. So now our golden ticket is this 0. So now you can go ahead and use the quadratic formula to solve for x here, but I'm just going to factorize and then solve for x. Even if you can use the quadratic formula, it's still fine. So now if we factorize this, don't forget the inequality. So it's going to be x. Two numbers that when you multiply they give you 6, when you add or subtract they give you 5. It's 6 and 1. Which one is big? It's 6, so the sign will be negative. Since the last sign is positive, is negative, obviously here it has to be positive. So these are our factors. Now in your mind, you know, if you were to solve for x, since we have two brackets multiplying each other, this will happen in your mind. This okay. This will happen in your mind. If you were to solve for x, you know, you take each part and equate it to 0. You take the second part, equate it to 0. So x will be -1, x will be 6. So those who are going to use the quadratic formula, they will get these values. So now the first point was solve for x. Did we solve for x? Yes. So now they're saying name your x values, the critical values. So now the second point will be C, V, which are the critical values. First one will be x equal -1, and the second one will be x equal 6. So we're done with this second step. Remember, first one you solve and then you name your x values, the critical values. So this is our first step, our second step. So now the third step is place your x values on the number line accordingly. So we all know the number line. So let's say this is our number line. Obviously 6 will be on this side and then -1 will be on this side. No problem. So for this point, we are done. And I forgot to add something. Let me add it here. Remember, an inequality with equal sign. Inequality with equal sign, they're presented with a shaded dot. And then the inequality with no equal sign is just an open interval or open circle. This one is shaded dot. So we need to take this into consideration. I'm sorry I didn't explain. I didn't put it in the guide part, but then no problem. It's something that you know. So now we have placed our values on the interval accordingly. So now we put intervals. So this is what I mean by putting interval. What can you say about the values that are on this side? Remember, we have numbers such as 7, 8, 9. So now what do we 9 up until infinity? What do we say about those values? We just say x is greater than or equal. Why am I using this sign? Because it's there in the question. So x is greater than or equal 6. So now let's come to this part. Remember those values we have -2, -3 up until -infinity. For those ones, we will just say x is less than or equal -1. So putting the outside intervals is not difficult because you will just say x is greater than or equal to any number that is here, and on that one you will just say x is less than or equal the -1, and then on the middle one you just put your values and then use the inequality and then put your x in the middle. So now someone might ask, what are these things that I'm writing here? Why do we need those intervals? Then my response is these intervals, one of them or two of them is going to be our final answer. That's why I prefer people writing them down so that they can just get the answer from the solution. So now, did we put intervals? Yes, we did. So now we'll do the second problem and you'll see how putting intervals work. And now the second, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth point was go to your original equation to make a judgment. So now let's go to our original equation to make judgment. So now this is our equation. We focus on this part. That part is greater than or equal 0. So now something that is greater than or equal to 0 in maths, simple terms, we are referring to something that is positive. So now we will write positive and circle it. We're going to use that at a later stage. Not difficult. So now let's go to the final point. They say substitute any value that lie within the interval. So now I want you to think deep. Can you tell me any number that is on this side? Any number that is on this side, excluding 6. Any number. We have 7, we have 8, we have 1,000, we have million. So now we are going to substitute that value of your choice here. And we will substitute one value. Which number do you think? I put 9. So now this is what I will do. I have bracket for x. So this is my x. Then I chose 9. I will put 9 squared and then minus 5 into the same value of x, which is 9. And then I have minus 6. So that's going to be minus 6. And I press my equal sign. What's the answer? Is 30. I don't care about the answer. I just wanted the sign. Is it positive or negative? Obviously, it's positive. So now I will write positive here. Now, since the exponent is 2, don't overthink. We're just going to mix match these signs. It's more like we have 3 parts. This is the first part, second part, and third part. We mix match the sign. If we have positive here, that means here we must have negative, and then here we must have positive. So it's just a mixed match of signs. Not difficult. So now, what did we say about the inequality with the inequality with equal sign? We said we can put a dot with a shaded. We can put a dot and we shade it. So now, what's going to be the direction of our solution? Since we are focusing on positive, and look, the positive is that side. If you go in, you going towards the negative, and negative is not our solution. So we have to go outside. Even here, we have to go outside. because we can't go inside because this is negative. So now, since we know our solutions are outside, remember I said you need to write the intervals because the intervals will be your answers. And therefore, you will make a conclusion by saying x is less than or equal -1, or x is greater than or equal 6. And then you go and get your trophy. This is your final answer. And then this is your number line presentation. Then you got full marks. Simple as that. So now let's go to the second question so that you see how these things work. They're not difficult, believe me. With this approach, you will never fail. Believe me, you will never fail. So now let's go to the second example. Suppose you have x squared. Suppose you have x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus 8. Okay, let's say equal 8. Let's say you have this. Okay, no, less than. Yeah, let's use the inequality. So now the first thing, this is an equation and a quadratic equation, for heaven's sake. What did we say about the quadratic equation? We need to have 0 on that side. That is number 1. So we will have x squared plus 2x minus 8 less than or equal 0. If you are fast enough, quick enough to react to these problems, you can see we have this part which is less than 0. What did we say about less than 0? We said it's negative. If it was greater than 0, it was going to be positive. So now you need to be quick in thinking. You will know there at your final answer, you will focus on negative. So now let's go. I said you can use quadratic to solve for x here, and those values of x, you name them as your critical values. So now, but I will factorize. Don't worry, use the quadratic formula and get those values of x and call them your critical values. Nothing wrong. So now we will have x, two numbers that when you multiply, you get 8. It's 4 and 2. When you subtract or add, you get 4. That is 4 and 2 our factors. Which one is big between 4 and 2? It's 4. It will take that sign, and then that one will be minus. Obviously, if we were to solve for x here, or x minus 2 equals 0, x will be -4 here, and then x will be 2 here. But remember, this is inequality. The values of x, these values of x, it does not mean you are done here. There will be your critical values. So now your critical values will be -4 and x will be 2. The steps. Did we solve for x? Yes. Did you name our x values critical values? Yes. What's next? We place your x values on the number line and accordingly. So here is our number line. You need to know your number line, how it operates. Obviously, we will have the negative ones this side and then the positive ones that side. And then I said, remember, you need to name your intervals. What can you say about numbers which are on that side? We can just say x is greater than or equal to. We're using this inequality because they used it in the equation. If they used an inequality without equal sign, we're also going to use inequality without equal sign. And now, what can you say about the values on this side? We will just say x is less than or equal -4. Now, what about the ones in the middle? The ones in the middle, you can put them as they are. So it's -4 and 2. And then you'll just put your inequality and then put x in the middle. Now, you need to highlight these things because remember, one of them can be a solution. So now we will put the dots. Remember the dots? Which one are we using? Are we using this one or this one? This first one or the second one? Why using the second one? Why? Simply because they're using that inequality. Remember, that one is for that inequality and that one is for that inequality. So now we will just put them here. I'm sorry if I'm not following the steps. Just want to make sure that you understand these things. You do them like the way I'm doing them. But it's important to follow your steps, to understand your steps. Once you understand your steps, you'll be able to do them like I'm doing them. So now let's check. Remember that step whereby you need to substitute any value that is in this side. So which value can we think of which is on that side? I can think of 3. I can think of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any value that you put here, it's not a problem. It will work. Even if you put 5 billion, we know 5 billion is on that side. So it will work. So we substitute them where you have the standard formula. So we are putting which value? Okay, someone says 5. Someone says 10. We can put it 5 squared. And then we have plus 2 into 5. And then we have minus 8. So now what is the value? It's 27. We ask ourselves questions. Is it positive or negative? It's positive. So we will put positive here. Remember I told you about mix match thing, about mixing signs, like having positive, negative, just like that. So if we have positive here, obviously in the middle, we will have negative. And then in the last part, we will have positive. If you don't believe that, you can test it. Substitute any value that is between -4 and 2. Believe me, the answer will be negative. So it's just a waste of time. You get one. If you get positive, you just mix match the signs. So now we check. What did we say here? We found that, or we were given that x, we're given that we end up with less than or equal 0, and less than or equal 0 is negative. So now you come to your diagram, you spot the negative. Why is the negative? It's in the middle. So now joining, are we going outside or are we going inside? We cannot go outside because outside is positive. Outside is positive. We want the negative, so we will just draw a line inside, and that will be our representation of the number line. And now, what is the answer for the negative? The answer for the negative is just below. Therefore, your answer will be -4 less than or equal x less than or equal 2, and that will be your answer. So now this is how you solve the inequality. Someone can do this thing using a graph. It's not a problem even with using the graph, but I prefer this approach. I think it's the most easiest and most interesting approach. So now let me I don't want to make long videos. Let me add some part on okay, we're going to talk about the exponents and the inequality. Let me squeeze the exponents, but I'm going to squeeze the guide. So now, what is important in exponents? What is that thing that you have to understand so that you can get the exponents right? So now, one thing that you need to be good with is basically the laws of exponents. So I'm just going to discuss a few laws of exponents. So the first law being a to the m times a to the n. If the bases are the same, you are multiplying, you will add the exponents. But let me save time. These videos are in this YouTube channel whereby I was discussing the laws of exponents. Now let me get straight to the point on the guide. What is it that you have to do in grade 11 to be able to survive? The first point is let lowest power be k. Let the lowest power be k. Remember what is power? Power is a to the x. So the whole thing is called a power. What do I mean by this? Let's say you have an equation with that look like this. So now if you look at this thing, which one is the lowest power, or maybe has the lowest exponent? A variable, but the exponent need to have x. That's important, or it need to have a variable. So which one is the lowest in that regard? Obviously is this one. So now what we will do using the guide, we will let this one be k. I hope I make sense, but you'll see as I apply these things. And it's quite easy. After letting the lowest be k, the equation gets better or it gets simple. It's either it's going to be a linear or it's going to be a quadratic, and then you can just solve. So now the second point, you will manipulate and solve for k. And note, you will either have a linear equation or a quadratic equation. And you know how to solve the linear equation and you know how to solve the quadratic equation. So now you let it to be linear k, then you solve the linear or you solve the quadratic. And the last part is, remember to put back 3 to the power of x or a to the power of x. So now suppose you solve for k. Let's say you solve for k and you find that the value of k is 9. You need to bring back the x into the equation so that you can be able to solve it. Let's say we let 3 to the x be k. So now once you solve for k, you need to bring back the argument that you made at the start. So now we will have 3 to the x equal 9. So that is what the point is about. You need to bring back the original equation or the original variable that was in the equation. And then you use this fact. If the bases are the same, and then we can equate the exponents, so there we can say a is equals to b. So now this is a brilliant idea on exponents. It can be expression or it can be equations. It's a nice way of solving these things. So now let's recap on what do. We let the lowest one be k, no problem. It can be the lowest or the common. If we don't have the lowest, something like 3 to the x plus 3 to the x times 4 equals to 6. You see, in this one, we don't have the lowest. If we don't have the lowest, we let the one that is there be k. It can be the lowest or the common. You see, 3 to the x is common and 3 to the x is common. And one of the point that you might want to take, I think, as the point before the last that we can put here. Remember, break down exponents. So what do I mean by breaking down? So this is what I mean. Suppose you have, and I think you need to start with this point. Please, I'm sorry guys, I think you need to start with this point and then the rest will follow. By breaking down exponents, it's, let's say you have something like x plus 2. The first thing that you need to do, you need to break this. This will be 3 to the x dot 3 to the 2. This is monumental. I don't want to lie. This is very, very vital. And as you write down your notes, please start with this point. This will be your first point. You break down the exponents. If they're like this, you break them. Remember, if you have something like 8 to the k minus 8, this one will be 8 to the k times 8 to the negative 8. That's the first thing I think you need to do. You break down the exponents. You let the lowest be k. If you don't have the lowest, you can let the common one be k. And then you manipulate and solve for k. Remember, always, you will end up with linear equation or quadratic equation. And then after solving for k, remember to put back 3 to the x or a to the x that you used, like let 3 to the x be k. Then after solving for k, you bring back the 3 to the x. And then the last point, you use this fact that if the bases are common, we just equate the exponents. And then believe me, once you master all this, no paper or no examiner can crack you. So guys, we'll meet in the next video whereby I'll be showing you the application of exponents. How do you solve? How do you simplify using the K method?